everybody. Thank you for taking the time to view this presentation. I am Elizabeth Ruth, and this is my composer review on Giuseppe Torelli. I really hope that's how you pronounce his name. I put it into Google Translate, and that's what came out, so that's what we're going with. Torelli was a musician of the late Baroque era. He was born in Verona, Italy on April 22nd in 1658, and he died in Bologna, Italy on February of 1709. For most of his life, he did stay in Italy. He was not a person who traveled very much, and we'll see that later on. So he stayed in Verona until 1680, where he worked with a maestro on strings. Torelli was mainly a string player, violin and viola, as well as a teacher and an orchestra conductor. He moved to Bologna province and worked as a maestro in the Imola Cathedral. Again, really hoping I pronounced that correctly. He did move to Vienna. He spent a little bit of time there, but he moved right back to Italy, where he stayed and he worked until his death. As he's not a very well-known composer, I had a hard time finding out different facts about his personal life or his love life or his family or anything. His musical training. He trained as a composer with Perti. He studied violin with these two people. I'm not going to even attempt to butcher their names because I know that will happen. There's a lot of speculation with who exactly he studied with. These are the names that came up in the articles that I've researched. But again, just like with his personal life, a lot of his training was speculation about who he studied with and where he studied. He contributed to the Baroque era music, and he was especially remembered for his development of the instrumental concerto. He developed the concerto grossi and the solo concerto for strings. And then another interesting fact, with strings aside, he was the most prolific Baroque composer for the trumpet, which I found super interesting because violin and trumpet are two extremely different instruments, but he brought the trumpet kind of to the forefront of this era. Historical events that were happening during the time of Torelli. The Enlightenment was beginning in Italy, and that we know started in the 1700s and continued into the 1800s. Political and sociocultural conditions began to improve in Italy. We know the philosophers were the ones who ushered in the Enlightenment, and then eventually the Age of Reform and Reason, where music again took a big part, and there was a focus on art, literature, and sculpting as well. In his last days, he suffered from hypochondria, and this condition worsened as he grew older, and just before his death, he spent little time composing near the end of his life, which is kind of different from a lot of other composers who compose a lot on their deathbed. But he spent very little time, and he did die in Bologna, Italy. Because this is going to be a video, I decided not to put links in here, but here are three of his pieces that are most well known, and if you just type these into Google, you will find great recordings of each of these. I really liked his Sinfonia for the trumpet. That was amazing. So hopefully you'll take some time to check these out. And like I said before, there's not a lot about him, so finding resources on his life was very tricky. Most of the resources talk about his music, and speculations are speculations on who he studied with, who he taught, and who he worked with. But here are three of the references that I used for this presentation. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.